So the next part of this project is going to actually be adding some characters and adding some structure to it. Because right now we've created some objects in the world, we've created some blueprints, but there's no gameplay, there's no real point to this. Now if you click the play button up here, you start simulating the game, you start testing the level. So if I click play, my character spawns exactly where my camera was. Now I can move around the world exactly like I could in the camera, using the exact same controls. I can even bump into these walls and stop myself from passing through them. But this isn't a character, this isn't anything that you could really use in your game. To start with, we couldn't add any code to this. So let's start adding some things. Now, the first thing we're going to add is a game mode. So I'll create a new folder for game mode just to keep it in there. Game mode. Double click this, and I'm going to use this area to create the game mode. So click the add import button here, and we're going to go up to the blueprint class again. So click on your blueprint class. Now instead of using an actor like we used last time, we're going to use this game mode base here. So click on the game mode base, and we're just going to call this we can call it anything, we'll just call it game mode 1. Game mode 1. Now once you've created that, we're going to actually start editing some of the project settings. So we're not actually going to edit this file here, we're going to use the edit button at the top on our top bar. Click on edit and go down to project settings. Now there's a lot of settings and properties and different things that you can change in here, but the first thing we're going to do on this left panel here, this big list here, towards the very top, we've got maps and modes. If you click on this, now we're actually going to change our startup and default map to our starter level, this one here. Now starter map is actually the name of the starter map which came with the project, so I've called it something very similar here, so don't be confused by that. This starter level, that's the one that we created. So click on that and add that. This time, from now on, if you close down Unreal and you start it back up, you'll be brought straight to this world, or this level we've created now. Okay, so that is our map. That's our map ready. The next thing we're going to look at is how we're going to control our character. So I'd like you to scroll down on this settings on the left and go down to inputs. Just here. Now there's two settings that we need to look at which are very important, and these are action mappings and axes mappings. And they're two very different types of input. An action map is a simple key that you'd press. Something like, if you imagine a button on a controller, your X button, your square button, your triangle button. Something you press. Doesn't matter how hard you press it, you're just pressing a button. Same with the keys in your keyboard. An axis mapping is something that you can lightly press or fully press. It doesn't have an exact, well, it doesn't always have an exact value. So if you think of your analog sticks on a controller, you can slightly push them forward, or you could fully push them forward, or anywhere in between. Now an axis map is used to control a range of values, like an analog. So we're going to bind our movement in axes, and anything additional like button presses is going to go in action mappings. Even though we're going to use WASD to control our character, later on, if we want to bind controller controls, it's important that we have them as axis mappings, because using a controller, if you lightly push forward, your character will walk, and if you fully push forward, it will jog or potentially even run. So that's the difference between action and axis mappings. It's very important to keep that in mind when you're actually mapping your controls out. Now let's start off with the basic controls. Axis mappings. So the first one we're going to add is for moving forward and backwards. So if you click the plus button here, and then open up axis mappings. Here's our new axis map. Now I'm going to call this move forward. And straight away, here's the control here. Now, naturally, for any game on PC, you would use W to move forward. So you can either go in this list and find the W key, apologies, or you can click this little button here and then press the key you want associated with it. So click W, and there you go. Now, a scale of 1 will mean that when the W key is pushed, any movement will be full. So it'll be fully walking forward or fully jogging forward. Imagine you push your analog stick fully forward. That is what W is going to do. Now I'm actually going to, instead of adding a move backwards axis mapping, I'm going to add a different key to this one here. So I'm going to click the plus next to move forward and add a new key, S. And instead of adding a move backwards axis mapping, I'm going to use the move forward one. So instead of having 1, I'm going to set this to, if I've clicked on it, I'm going to set this to -1. Now that means W will push the character full speed forwards, and then S will push the character full speed backwards. It doesn't necessarily matter so much if you use a separate axis mapping for your backwards movement, but in this case it allows you to move forward and backwards using the exact same code, so it'll save you a little bit of space later on. Now the next thing we're going to do is add moving side to side strafing. So I'm going to go back up to the axis mapping at the top and click the plus up here. And we're going to call this move right. As before, I'm going to click on this, and the button to move right would be D. So pressing D will move the character full speed to the right. Now as I've done before, I'm going to add a new one here to the move right function, and I'm going to click A, and I'm going to set this to -1. The same concept as previously, so you can move forward or backwards or right and left using the same code. Now the next thing I'm going to do is add looking up and down and looking left and right. So again, click the plus, and I'm going to call this look up, and I'm going to assign this actually to, if I'm going to click on here, mouse Y. So if you think of a graph, X goes across, Y goes up. I'm going to assign this to mouse Y. Now the computer doesn't quite look at this the same way, so 1 would actually be inverted. So I'm going to actually put this as -1. That's nothing too important to understand, it's just the way the computer processes it. Finally, I'm going to click plus by axis mapping again, and I'm going to call this one turn, and this one's going to be set to mouse X, and this one can stay as 1. So that's all the axis mappings I'm going to use for now. So I can click this little arrow and I can close this down. I'm then going to add some buttons in the action mapping. So click the plus again, open it up, and we're going to use this one for interact. And the key I'm going to use for interact is going to be E. Finally, one last control, I'm going to click plus again, and this one's going to be for jump. And this time I'm going to click here and spacebar to jump. And that's that. That's my controls sorted. So the controls that I've used here: E to interact, spacebar to jump, W to move forward, S to move back, D to move right, A to move left, mouse Y to look up and down, and then mouse X to turn left and right. So before moving on to the next part, can you make sure that your controls are set up in a logical way? It doesn't have to be WASD if you don't want, you can use the arrow keys, but make sure they're set up the way that you want them set up for your game.